Here's a line-by-line explanation of the IELTS passage, Beyond the Blue Horizon, in simple, beginner-friendly English, Cambridge IELTS 10 Test 3 Passage 3. Title: Beyond the Blue Horizon. Ancient voyagers who settled the far-flung islands of the Pacific Ocean. Explanation. This is about ancient people who traveled very far across the Pacific Ocean and lived on islands. Paragraph 1. An important archaeological discovery on the island of Afarte in the Pacific archipelago of Vanuatu has revealed traces of an ancient seafaring people, the distant ancestors of today's Polynesians. Explanation. A big discovery was made on Afarte Island, in Vanuatu. It shows signs of very old people who used to travel by sea. They were the early ancestors of the Polynesian people. The site came to light only by chance. Explanation. The site, burial place, was found accidentally. An agricultural worker, digging in the grounds of a derelict plantation, scraped open a grave, the first of dozens in a burial ground some 3,000 years old. Explanation. A farm worker was digging in an old, unused farm. He found a grave and later many more. These are about 3,000 years old. It is the oldest cemetery ever found in the Pacific Islands, and it harbors the remains of an ancient people archaeologists call the Lapita. Explanation. This is the oldest graveyard found in the Pacific. It has the bones of people called Lapita by archaeologists, scientists who study old things. Paragraph 2. They were daring blue water adventurers who used basic canoes to rove across the ocean. Explanation. The Lapita people were brave sea travelers. They used simple canoes to travel long distances over the ocean, but they were not just explorers. Explanation. They did more than just explore. They were also pioneers who carried with them everything they would need to build new lives, their livestock, taro seedlings and stone tools. Explanation. They brought animals, plants, like taro, and tools with them to start a new life. Within the span of several centuries, the Lapita stretched the boundaries of their world from the jungle-clad volcanoes of Papua New Guinea to the loneliest coral outliers of Tonga. Explanation. Over a few hundred years, they spread from Papua New Guinea to faraway islands like Tonga. Paragraph 3. The Lapita left precious few clues about themselves, but Afarte expands the volume of data available to researchers dramatically. Explanation. The Lapita didn't leave many signs, but the new discovery in Afarte gives a lot of new information to scientists. The remains of 62 individuals have been uncovered so far, and archaeologists were also thrilled to find 6 complete Lapita pots. Explanation. So far, they found 62 people's bones and 6 full pots made by Lapita. Other items included a Lapita burial urn with modeled birds arranged on the rim as though peering down at the human remains sealed inside. Explanation. They also found a special pot, urn, with bird designs around the edge. Looking into the pot where the bones were kept. It's an important discovery, says Matthew Spriggs, for it conclusively identifies the remains as Lapita. Explanation. A leading scientist, Matthew Spriggs, said this find clearly proves these bones belong to Lapita people. Paragraph 4. DNA teased from these human remains may help answer one of the most puzzling questions in Pacific anthropology. Explanation. Scientists hope to get DNA from the bones to solve a big mystery about people in the Pacific. Did all Pacific Islanders spring from one source or many? Explanation. Did all Pacific people come from one place, or from many? Was there only one outward migration from a single point in Asia, or several from different points? Explanation. Did people move from just one place in Asia or from different places? This represents the best opportunity to find out who the Lapita actually were. Explanation. This discovery is a great chance to learn more about who the Lapita were and where they came from. Paragraph 5. There is one stubborn question for which archaeology has yet to provide any answers. How did the Lapita accomplish the ancient equivalent of a moon landing? Many times over. Explanation. There's still one big question. How did the Lapita do something as amazing as going to the moon but thousands of years ago many times? No one has found one of their canoes or any rigging, which could reveal how the canoes were sailed. Explanation. No one has found any of their boats or equipment. So we don't know how they sailed them, nor do the oral histories and traditions of later Polynesians offer any insights. For they turn into myths long before they reach as far back in time as the Lapita. Explanation. Even stories passed down by later Polynesians don't help, because they are more like myths and don't go far enough back to tell us about the Lapita. Paragraph 6. All we can say for certain is that the Lapita had canoes that were capable of ocean voyages, and they had the ability to sail them, says Jeff Irwin. Explanation. A professor, Jeff Irwin, says we only know one thing for sure. Lapita had boats that could travel across the ocean, and they knew how to sail them. Those sailing skills were developed and passed down over thousands of years by earlier mariners. Explanation. Their sailing skills were learned over thousands of years by older sailors before them. The real adventure didn't begin, however, until their Lapita descendants sailed out of sight of land. Explanation. But the big adventure started when the Lapita sailed so far that they couldn't see any land anymore. This must have been as difficult for them as landing on the moon is for us today. Explanation. That journey was probably as hard for them as going to the moon is for us. Certainly it distinguished them from their ancestors. But what gave them the courage to launch out on such risky voyages? Explanation. This made them different from earlier people. But why were they brave enough to take such dangerous trips? Paragraph 7. The Lapita's thrust into the Pacific was eastward, against the prevailing trade winds. Irwin notes. Explanation. The Lapita traveled east, but the wind usually blew the other way, making it harder. Those nagging headwinds, he argues, may have been the key to their success. Explanation. Irwin says these opposite winds might have actually helped them. They could sail out for days into the unknown. They could turn about and catch a swift ride back on the trade winds. Explanation. They could sail out and explore. If they didn't find land, they could use the wind to come back quickly. This is what would have made the whole thing work. Explanation. This idea explains how their exploring was possible. Once out there, skilled seafarers would have detected abundant leads. Explanation. Once far away, smart sailors could see many signs of nearby land. Seabirds, coconuts and twigs, the afternoon pile-up of clouds. Explanation. They could look for birds, floating coconuts, and clouds, all signs that an island might be near. Paragraph 8. For returning explorers, successful or not, the geography of their own archipelagos would have provided a safety net. Explanation. Whether they found new land or not, the shape of their home islands helped them return safely. Without this, getting lost and sailing off into eternity would have been all too easy. Explanation. Without that help, they might have gotten lost forever at sea. Vanuatu stretches more than 500 miles, forming a backstop for mariners bringing the trade winds home. Explanation. For example, Vanuatu has many islands over a wide area, which helped sailors come home safely by following the islands. Paragraph 9. All this presupposes one essential detail: the Laputa had mastered the advanced art of sailing against the wind. Explanation: all this depends on one big idea, that the Laputa knew how to sail against the wind. And there's no proof they could do any such thing. Anderson says. Explanation: but another expert, Athol Anderson, says there's no evidence they could really do that. People have built canoes to recreate those early voyages, but nobody has any idea what their canoes looked like. Explanation: people today have built boats to try these trips again, but no one knows what the original boats really looked like. Paragraph 10. Rather than give all the credit to human skill, Anderson invokes the winds of chance. Explanation: Anderson thinks it wasn't just skill luck. Wind changes might have helped too. El Niño may have helped scatter the Laputa. Explanation: the weather pattern called El Niño might have pushed Laputa people far out across the sea. He points out a series of unusually frequent El Niños around the time of the Laputa expansion. Explanation: at the time Laputa were traveling, El Niño happened a lot, changing the wind direction. By reversing the regular east to west flow, these super El Niños might have taken the Laputa on long unplanned voyages. Explanation: these strong El Niños may have pushed the Laputa east, helping them travel far even without planning. Paragraph 11. However they did it, the Laputa spread themselves a third of the way across the Pacific, then called it quits. Explanation: however they managed it. The Laputa traveled across 1/3 of the Pacific Ocean, then stopped. Ahead lay the vast emptiness of the Central Pacific. Explanation: in front of them was a huge area of ocean with no land. Perhaps they were too thinly stretched to venture farther. Explanation: maybe they didn't go further because their population was too small. They probably never numbered more than a few thousand in total. They encountered hundreds of islands. Explanation: there were only a few thousand Laputa people, but they found and settled on many islands like the 300+ islands in Fiji.